Part 2.
Chapter 1. High Place. There is a lovely road that runs from Isopo into the hills. These hills are grass-covered and rolling, and they are too lovely to describe. The road climbs 11 kilometers into them, to Carisbrooke, and from there, if there is no mist, you look down on one of the fairest valleys of Africa. About you there is grass, and you may hear the forlorn crying of the titihoya, one of the birds of the grasslands. Below you is the valley of the Umzimkulu, on its journey from the Drakensberg Mountains to the sea, and beyond and behind the river, great hill after great hill, and beyond and behind them, the mountain of Ingeli and East Griqualand. The grass is rich and thick. You cannot see the soil. It holds the rain and the mist, and they sink slowly into the ground, feeding the streams in every small valley. It is well looked after, and not too many cattle feed upon it. Not too many fires burn it, leaving the soil empty. Up here on the tops is a small and lovely valley, between two hills that shelter it. There is a house there, and flat planted fields. They will tell you that it is one of the finest farms of this countryside. It is called High Place, the farm and dwelling place of Mr. James Jarvis, and it stands high above Ndocheni and the great valley of the Umzimkulu. Jarvis watched the ploughing with sad eyes. The hot afternoon sun of October poured down on the fields, and there was no cloud in the sky. Rain, rain. There was no rain. The lumps of earth turned up hard and unbroken, and the plough rode uselessly over the iron soil. Jarvis, calling his dog, started out along the path that led to the tops. Up there was grass, fed by the mists, but below the tops the grass was dry, and the hills of Ndocheni were red and empty. Something might have been done if these people had only learned how to build walls to save the soil from washing away in the rains, and if they had planted along the lines of the hills. But the hills were steep, and the cattle were weak, so that it was easier to plant from the top down, and the people were uneducated and knew nothing about farming methods. Some people said there must be more education, but a boy with education did not want to work on the farms and went off to the towns to look for an easier occupation with more money. The work was done by old men and women, and when the grown men came back from the mines and the towns, they sat in the sun and drank their liquor and made endless conversation. Jarvis turned these old thoughts over in his mind as he sat on the hilltop. Down in the valley below, there was a car going up to his house. He recognized it as the police car from Isopo, and it would probably be the police captain making his usual daily tour of the district. His wife was coming out of the house to meet the car, and there were two policemen climbing out of it. His wife was pointing up to the tops. He called his dog and set out along the path, and about halfway down to the fields, he met the two police officers. "Well, Captain, have you brought some rain for us?" "No, Mr. Jarvis. I'm sorry, but I have bad news for you." "Bad news? Is it my son?" he asked. "Yes, Mr. Jarvis." "Is he dead?" "Yes, Mr. Jarvis." The captain paused. "He was shot dead this afternoon in Johannesburg." "Shot dead? By whom?" "It is suspected by a native housebreaker." "My God," he said, and then, "You didn't tell my wife?" "No, Mr. Jarvis. She isn't strong. I don't know how she will stand it. Mr. Jarvis, I am instructed to offer you as much help as I can. You could take a plane and be in Johannesburg at midnight. Yes, yes. We'll take it. In a few minutes, they were at the house. James, what's the matter? Some trouble, my dear. Come with me to the office. The captain went to the telephone. He began to talk to police headquarters about the plane, and he put his hand over his open ear to shut out the sound of the woman crying. Chapter 2. The Story of a Stranger. A young man met them at the airport. Mr. and Mrs. Jarvis? Yes? I'm John Harrison, Mary's brother. Mary was their dead son's wife. I don't think you remember me. I was only a child when you saw me last. Let me carry your things. I've a car here for you. Mary and the children are at my mother's, and we're expecting you both to stay with us. In the car, he said to them, Mr. Jarvis, Arthur was the finest man I ever knew. How is Mary? She's suffering from the shock, Mr. Jarvis, but she's very brave. And the children? They've taken it very badly, Mr. Jarvis, and that has given Mary something to occupy herself. John Harrison told Jarvis all that he knew about the crime. He told him, too, of the essay his son Arthur had been writing just before he was killed on The Truth About Native Crime. My son and I didn't see eye to eye on the native question, said Jarvis, but I'd like to see what he wrote. My father and I don't see eye to eye on the native question either, Mr. Jarvis, said John Harrison. You know, there was no one in South Africa who thought so deeply about it, and no one who thought so clearly as Arthur did. And what else is there to think deeply and clearly about in South Africa, he used to say. Later that evening, John's father told Jarvis how the messages had poured into the house. Messages from every kind of person, he said, from the bishop and from white politicians, and from coloured people and Indians and Jews. There was talk of getting him to stand at the next election as a representative for the natives. I didn't know that. Yes, he was always speaking here and there. Native crime, and more native schools and hospitals. Jarvis filled his pipe slowly, and listened to this story of his son, to this story of a stranger. I warned him once, said Harrison, that he would lose his business with the Europeans, and told him there was Mary to consider. I've spoken to Mary, he said to me. She and I agree that it's more important to speak the truth than to make money. Jarvis did not speak, for this boy of his had gone journeying in strange waters, further than his parents had known. Or perhaps his mother knew. It would not surprise him if his mother knew. Soon afterwards, they said good night, and Jarvis went up to bed and told his wife all that Harrison had told him. It makes me proud, she whispered. But you always knew he was like that? Yes, I knew. It's easier for a mother, James. I suppose so. It was a good life he led. I'm sorry I didn't understand it. Then he said in a whisper, I didn't know it would ever be so important to understand it. There's one thing I don't understand, why it should have happened to him. Chapter 3. It is not acceptable. Jarvis sat in the chair of his son in his son's study. On the table were papers in his son's handwriting. They were obviously part of some larger whole, for the first line was the end of a sentence, and the last line was a sentence unfinished. Was acceptable. What we did when we came to South Africa was acceptable. It was acceptable to develop our great resources with the aid of what labour we could find. It was acceptable to use unskilled men for unskilled work. But it is not acceptable to keep men unskilled for the sake of unskilled work. It was acceptable when we discovered gold to bring labor to the mines. It was acceptable to build compounds and to keep women and children away from the towns. But in the light of what we know now, it is no longer acceptable. It is not acceptable for us to go on destroying family life when we know that we are destroying it. It is not acceptable to develop any resources if they can be developed only by a policy of keeping labor poor. It is not acceptable to add to one's possessions if this can only be done at the cost of other men. It was acceptable to leave native education to those who wanted to develop it. It was acceptable to doubt its benefits, but it is no longer acceptable in the light of what we know. There is now a large native population in the towns. Society must educate its children so that they grow up to obey the society's laws and realize the aims and purposes of the society. There is no other way that it can be done. It was acceptable to allow the destruction of a tribal system that prevented the growth of the country, but it is not acceptable to watch its destruction and to replace it by nothing, so that the whole people goes bad physically and morally. The old tribal system was, for all its violence and strange sets of beliefs, a moral system. Our natives today produce criminals, not because it is their nature to do so, but because their simple system of order and tradition has been destroyed. It was destroyed by our own civilization. Our civilization has therefore an unavoidable duty to set up another system of order and tradition. It is time. And there the paper and the page ended. Jarvis searched among the things on the table, but he could find nothing more. He sat smoking his pipe and was lost in thought. Unasked, unwanted, the picture of the small boy came to his mind. The small boy at High Place. Chapter 4. The Servant Boy Recovers. The funeral was over. "You're welcome to stay here, Jarvis," said Harrison, "as long as you are wanted in Johannesburg." "What did the police say, if I may ask?" "They're still waiting for the servant boy to recover. They have hopes that he recognized one of them. They hope, too, that someone may have seen them getting away. I hope to God they get them, and hang them all. Pardon me, Jarvis. I know exactly what you mean. We are not safe, Jarvis. I don't even know that hanging them will make us safe. Sometimes I think the problem has got beyond us. I know what you mean, but myself, perhaps it's too soon to think about it. I know what you mean. I understand that side of it isn't the side you feel about the most. You're right. It's not that side of it that seems important, not yet anyway, but I realize there is another side to it. We've been demanding more police. I'm not a native hater, Jarvis. I try to give them decent wages, and a clean room and some time off. Our servants stay with us for years, but the natives as a whole are getting out of control. They've even started trade unions. They're threatening to strike here in the mines for 10 shillings a day. They get about 3 shillings now, and some of the mines are near closing down. They live in decent compounds, some of the latest compounds I wouldn't mind living in myself. They get good food, far better than they ever get at home, free medical attention, and God knows what. I tell you, Jarvis, if mining costs go up much more, there won't be any mines. And where will South Africa be then? And where would the natives be themselves? They'd die by the thousands of lack of food. I tell you, there wouldn't be any South Africa at all if it weren't for the mines. There was silence for a time, and then Jarvis said, "Harrison, I'm going to bed. It's done me good to listen to you. I haven't done much talking myself. It's not because I'm not interested. I'm sure you understand. But I could have wished that he was here tonight, that I could have heard him argue with you. I didn't agree with him, said Harrison, but I had a great respect for anything that he said. The next morning, Harrison called Jarvis early. The police have just telephoned Jarvis. The boy recovered consciousness this morning. He says there were 3 right enough, and he is sure that the one that knocked him out was an old garden boy of your son's. The police are after him now. They certainly seem to be moving. Chapter 5. The Court. At the head of the court is a high seat where the judge sits. The judge does not make the law. It is the people that make the law. It is the duty of a judge to do justice, but it is only the people that can be just. In South Africa, men are proud of their judges, because they cannot be bought. Even the black men have faith in them, though they do not always have faith in the law. In a land of fear, this honesty is like a lamp set upon a stand, giving light to all that are in the house. They call for silence in the court, and the people stand, and the judge enters. The court is begun. The 3 that are to be judged come in: Absalom Khumalo, Matthew Khumalo, and Johannes Pafuri. The lawyer for the government speaks for a long time and tells the court the whole story of the crime. And Absalom Khumalo is still and silent, but the other 2 look hurt and shocked to think such things are said. "Why did you carry this gun?" asks the lawyer. "It was to frighten the servant of the house," says Absalom. "If this gun is to frighten people, why must it be loaded?" But the boy does not answer. Questions, questions, questions. And later, "I was afraid, I was afraid. I never meant to shoot him." And then more questions. Chapter 6. Gold in Oudendaalsrust. There is little attention being paid to the trial of those accused of the murder of Arthur Jarvis of Parkwold. For gold has been discovered, more gold, rich gold, in a little place called Oudendaalsrust. Yesterday it was quite unknown. Today it is one of the famous places of the world. The gold is as rich as any gold that has ever been discovered in South Africa, as rich as anything in Johannesburg. Men are saying that a new Johannesburg will rise there, a great city of tall buildings and busy streets. Men that were sad because the gold in Johannesburg could not last forever are happy and excited. There is excitement in Johannesburg. Men go mad, for the shares are climbing in price to heights that are beyond expectation. Gold, gold, gold. The country is going to be rich again. Shares are up from 20 shillings to 100 shillings. Think of it. Thank God for it. There are people, it is true, who are not very thankful, but it must be admitted that they hold no shares at all. Some of these people are saying it would be nice if these shares could have stayed at 20 shillings, and the other 80 shillings have been used to save the soil of the country, to build boys' clubs and girls' clubs, and to have more hospitals, and pay more to the miners. Well, say those who have the shares, anyone can see that this thinking is confused, because the price of shares has really nothing to do with a question of wages at all. And perhaps a great city will grow up at Oudendaalsrust, a second Johannesburg. But money is not something to go mad about, and no second Johannesburg is needed upon the earth. One is enough. Chapter 7. The Heaviest Thing. Jarvis had just reached the last paragraphs of another of his son's essays, which the younger Harrison had brought for him to read. Therefore, I shall give myself, my time, my energy, my talents, to the service of South Africa. I shall no longer ask myself if this or that is advantageous, but only if it is right. I shall do this not because I am noble or kind, but because life slips away, and because I need for the rest of my journey a compass that will not lie. There was a knock at the kitchen door, and he went out to find a native priest standing there. The priest was old, and his black clothes were green with age, and his collar was brown with age. He took off his hat, showing the whiteness of his head, and he looked afraid, and he was trembling. "Good morning, Umfundisi," said Jarvis in Zulu. The priest answered in a trembling voice, "Sir." And to Jarvis's surprise, he sat down on the lowest step, as though he were ill or hungry. "Are you ill, Umfundisi? Do you wish water or food?" "No, sir. I shall recover." Slowly, the old priest stood up. "You are from Ndocheni, sir," he said. "Yes, I come from Ndocheni, but you are in fear of me, and I do not know what it is." "It is true, sir. It is very heavy. It is the heaviest thing of all my years." "Tell me," said Jarvis. "It will help you." "Then," said the old man, "this thing that is the heaviest thing of all my years is the heaviest thing of all your years also." Jarvis looked at him. "You can mean only one thing," he said. "You can mean only one thing. It was my son that killed your son," said the old man. So they were silent. "I have heard you. I understand what I did not understand. There is now anger in me. I have seen you riding past Ndocheni, sir, past the church where I work." "Perhaps you saw the boy also," said Jarvis. "He too used to ride past Ndocheni on a red horse with a white face, and he carried wooden guns here in his belt, as small boys do. I remember, sir. There was a brightness in him." "Yes, yes," said Jarvis. "There was a brightness in him." Again they were silent. The old man started to walk down the path to the back gate. As he turned to close it, he saw that Jarvis had followed him, and he bowed to him. "Go well, Umfundisi," said Jarvis. "Stay well, sir." As Jarvis returned to the house, his wife came to meet him. "Why are you so upset, James?" she asked. "Something that came out of the past," he said. "You know how it comes suddenly." She was satisfied and said, "I know." She held his arm more closely. Chapter 8. The Great Bull Voice. The Great Bull Voice is speaking there in the square. There are many policemen there, both black and white, to keep order, because there are those who can be moved by the sound of the voice alone. For the voice has magic in it, and it has threatening in it, and it is as though Africa itself were in it. The sound of a lion thunders in it over the Black Mountains. "We do not ask for what cannot be given," says John Khumalo. "We ask only for our share of what is produced by our labor. New gold has been found, and South Africa is rich again. This gold will stay in the depths of the earth if we do not dig it out. I do not say it is our gold. I say only that we should get our share in it. It is the gold of the whole people, the white and the black, and the colored. But who will get most of this gold? A wave of excitement passes through the crowd. The policemen stand ready, except those who have heard this before, for they know that this Khumalo goes so far and no further. What if this voice should say words that it speaks already in private, should rise and not fall again, should rise and rise and rise, and the people rise with it, should excite them with thoughts of power and possession? It would not be hard to do. It does not need a brain to think such words. But the man is afraid, and the deep voice dies down, and the people come to themselves again. But when the voice speaks again, the crowd becomes excited again, as though a great wind were blowing through it. Here is the moment, John Khumalo, for the great voice to reach even to the gates of heaven. But he knows the great power that he has, the power of which he is afraid, and the voice dies away, as thunder dies away over mountains, and slips away quietly on the wind. There are those who know that to go to prison would bring greatness to them. There are those who would go to prison not caring if it brought greatness or not. But John Khumalo is not one of them. There is no greatness in prison. The times are anxious. There can be no doubt about that. The strike has come and gone. It never went beyond the mines. The worst trouble was at a place where the police were called in to drive the black miners into the mine. There was fighting, and 3 of the black miners were killed. But all is quiet, they report. All is quiet. In the empty port there is water that moves endlessly against the stone walls. In the dark and silent forest there is a leaf that falls. Nothing is ever quiet, except for fools. Chapter 9. Another Murder. Mrs. Litebi called Gertrude into the house. "I have done my best to understand you, my daughter, but I do not succeed in it. I did no wrong. I did not say you did wrong. But you do not understand this house. You do not understand the people that live in it." Gertrude looked angry. "I do understand it," she said. "Then why do you speak with such people, my daughter? I did not know they were not decent people. Do you not hear the way they speak, the way they laugh? Do you not hear them laugh lazily and carelessly? I did not know it was wrong. I did not say it was wrong. It is lazy and careless, the way they speak and laugh. Are you not trying to be a good woman? Then such people will not help you. Your brother the Mfundisi has surely suffered enough." "He has suffered." "Then do not make him suffer further, my daughter." "I shall be glad to leave this place," Gertrude said. "I do not know what to do in this place." "It is not this place only," said Mrs. Litebi. "Even in Ndotcheni you will find those who are ready to laugh and speak carelessly." "It is this place," said Gertrude. "I have known nothing but trouble in this Johannesburg. I shall be glad to be gone. It will not be long before you go, for the case will finish tomorrow." There was a knock at the door, and a woman neighbor came in. "There is a bad thing in the newspaper," she said, and she showed the other women. Another murder in city. European shot dead by native housebreaker. They were shocked. "It is a hard thing that this should happen at this moment," said the woman, "just when the case is to finish." Mrs. Litebi heard the sound of the gate and threw the paper under a chair. It was Khumalo and the girl. The girl was holding his arm, for he was weak in these days. She guided him to his room, and they were hardly gone before Msimango entered. His eyes fell on the paper at once. "Has he seen it?" he asked. No, Umfundisi. Is it not a hard thing that this should happen at this moment? This judge is a great judge, said Msimango, but it is a hard thing, as you say. Our friend likes to read the paper. What shall we do? There is no other paper here, said Mrs. Litaby. But when he goes to eat at the mission house, he will see it. That is why I came, said Msimango. Mother, could we not eat here tonight? That is a small thing to ask. There is food enough, though it is simple. Indeed, Mother, you are always our helper. For what else are we born? She said. So they hid the newspaper, and they all ate at Mrs. Litaby's. Chapter 10. The Judgment. The people stand when the great judge comes into the court. They stand more seriously today, for this is the day of the judgment. The judge sits, and then the people. And then the three accused are brought from the place under the court. I have given long thought and consideration to this case, says the judge. I have listened carefully to all the evidence that has been brought forward, and have tested it piece by piece. Very carefully, the judge goes through the evidence as to whether it was Matthew Khumalo or Johannes Parfuri who were with Absalom Khumalo when he shot Arthur Jarvis. And at last, I have come to the conclusion that we cannot be certain that the second and third men are guilty, and the charges against them will therefore be dropped. The accused, Absalom Khumalo, makes no sign. He does not even look at the two who are now free. But Parfuri looks about as though he would say, "This is right. This is just." There remains the case against the first accused, says the judge, and he admits freely that he shot Arthur Jarvis. His lawyer draws attention to his youth and to the terrible effect of a great and evil city on the character of a simple tribal boy. He has told us of the disaster that has happened to our native tribal society, and of the responsibility of white society for this disaster. But even if this is true, there is nevertheless a law, and the judges must carry out the law. A judge may not fail to carry out the law because the society is imperfect. If the law is the law of a society that some feel to be unfair, it is the law and the society that must be changed. Again, the careful and detailed review of the evidence, this time about Absalom Khumalo. This young man goes to a house with the intention of breaking in and stealing. He takes with him a loaded gun. He says that it was not his intention to kill. Why then must it be loaded? He says he had no intention to kill, and that he fired the gun out of fear. But it is true that he took with him a weapon the use of which might well result in the death of any man who got in the way of his stealing. The law on this point, and so on, until the end. They are silent in the court. The judge speaks. This court finds you guilty, Absalom Khumalo, of the murder of Arthur Trevelyan Jarvis. Have you anything to say before I sentence you? I have only this to say, that I killed this man, but I did not mean to kill him, only I was afraid. They are silent in the court.
I sentence you, Absalom Kumalo, to be hanged by the neck until you are dead, and may the Lord forgive you.
The judge rises, and the people rise, but not all is silent. The guilty one falls to the floor, crying, and there is a woman screaming, and an old man crying, "O God! Oh, my God!" No one calls for silence, though the judge is not quite gone. For who can stop the heart from breaking? They come out of the court, the white on one side, the black on the other, according to the custom. But Father Vincent and the young white man break the custom, and they and Msimango help the old and broken man. It is not often that such a custom is broken. It is only when there is a deep experience that such a custom is broken. Chapter 11. Brother Shuts Out Brother. They passed again through the great gate in the high wall, Father Vincent and Kumalo and Gertrude, and the girl Absalom was to marry, and Msimango. The boy and girl greeted each other like strangers, each giving hands without life, to be held loosely, so that the hands fell apart easily. And Kumalo said desperately to his son, "Are you in health?" And the boy answered, "I am greatly. Are you in health, my father?" So Kumalo said, "I am greatly." He searched for other things to say, but he could not find them. Then Father Vincent married Absalom and the girl. After it was done, the priest and the wife and Gertrude left father and son, and Kumalo said to him, "I am glad you are married." "I am also glad, my father." "I shall care for your child, my son." "And you will tell my mother that I remember her?" "Yes, indeed, I shall tell her." "When does my father return to Ndotcheni?" "Tomorrow, my son." "Tomorrow?" "Yes, tomorrow." At these words, the boy fell on the floor and began to cry. For a boy is afraid of death. The old man knelt by his son. "Be of courage, my son." "I am afraid," he cried. "I am afraid." The prison guard came in and said, "Old man, you must go now." "My son, I must go now." He stood up, but the boy caught his father by the knees and cried out to him, "You must not leave me! You must not leave me!" He broke out again into the terrible crying. The prison guard said again, "Old man, you must go now." And Kumalo said to Absalom, "Stay well, my son." But the boy did not hear him. And so they went their own ways. Heavy with grief, Kumalo left him and went out to the gate in the wall where the others were waiting. And the girl came to him and said shyly, but with a smile, "Umfundisi." "Yes, my child." "I am now your daughter." "It is true," he said. Kumalo went to see his brother. "I am come to say farewell to you, my brother." "Well, well, you are returning to Ndotcheni. You have been a long time away, my brother, and your wife will be glad to see you. When are you leaving?" "We leave tomorrow at 9 o'clock. "So Gertrude is going with you, and her child. You are doing a good thing, my brother. Johannesburg is not a place for a woman alone." "I am taking another child also," said Kumalo, "the wife of my son, and she too is with child." "Well, well, I have heard of it," said John Kumalo. "That is another good thing you are doing." "My brother, there is a matter that must be spoken between us." "It is as you wish, my brother." "I have not come here to criticize you." "Criticize me?
Why should you criticize me? There was a case and a judge. That is not for you or me or any other person.
I do not say that I should criticize you. As you say, there is a case and a judge. There is also a great judge. But of him you and I do not speak. But there is quite another matter.
Well, well, what is this matter?
One thing is to greet you before I go. But I could not greet you and say nothing. You have seen how it is with my son. He left his home and he was eaten up. What of your own son? He also has left his home.
I am thinking about this matter, said John Khumalo. When this trouble is finished, I shall bring him back here. He laughed his big laugh. I cannot leave all the kindnesses to you, my brother.
And there is one last thing, said Khumalo.
You are my older brother. Speak what you wish.
Your politics, my brother. Where are they taking you?
My politics, my brother, are my own. I do not speak to you about your religion.
You said, speak what you wish.
Well, well, I did say it. But I know what I am fighting for. You have read history. History teaches that the men who do the work cannot be kept down forever. If they will stand together, who will stand against them?
You mean if they strike?
Yes, I mean that.
But the last strike was not successful.
John Khumalo stood on his feet, and his voice was low and hard. Look what they did to us, he said. They forced us into the mines as though we were slaves. Have we no right to keep back our labor?
Do you hate the white man, my brother?
John Khumalo looked at him carefully. I hate no man, he said. I hate only injustice.
I have heard that you have said dangerous things here in this shop. I have heard that they are watching you. I say this because you are my brother. Have no doubt it is fear in his eyes. The big man looks like a boy that is caught.
In this shop? Who would know what is said in this shop?
For all his wish to forgive, Khumalo's desire to hurt was stronger, so strong that he half wanted to lie. He gave in to this desire and lied. I have heard, he said, that a man might have been sent to this shop to deceive you, as a friend. The big man wiped his face again.
You heard that?
And Khumalo, ashamed, had to say, I heard it.
What a friend, said the big man. What a friend. And Khumalo cried at him out of his suffering. My son had 2 such friends.
The big man looked at him and understood.
Out of my shop, he shouted. Out of my shop.
He kicked over the table and came at Khumalo, so that the old man had to step out of the door into the street, and the door was shut against him. Out there in the street, he was ashamed. He had come to tell his brother that power makes you do bad things, that a man who fights for justice must himself be clean, that love is greater than force, and none of these things had he done.
God forgive me,
he said. He turned to the door, but it was locked. Brother had shut out brother. The people were watching, so he walked away in his unhappiness. Msimango gave a party at Mrs. Litebe's that evening. It was not a happy party, but there was plenty of food, and there was some sad pleasure in it. Msimango made a speech about his brother priest Khumalo and Mrs. Litebe's kindness to them all. Khumalo made a speech too, but it was weak and uncertain, for the lie and the quarrel were in his mind. But he thanked Msimango and Mrs. Litebe for all their kindness. Then Msimango told them that he had news for them. He was retiring into a religious community and would give up the world and all possessions. They finished with prayers, and afterwards Msimango said to Khumalo, "I am giving up all possessions, but I have saved a little money, and I have permission from the church to give this to you, to help you with all the money you have spent in Johannesburg and all your new duties." He put a post office book into Khumalo's hand. Khumalo said, "In all my days, I have known no one as you are." And Msimango said sharply, "I am only a weak man, and I ask that you will pray for me in this new thing I am about to do." "I shall pray for you, morning and evening, all my days." "Good night, brother." "Good night, Msimango, friend of friends, and may God watch over you always." "And you also." Khumalo watched him go down the street. In the morning he rose early. He opened the door quietly and shook the girl gently. "It is time for us to go," he said. "I shall not be long," she said. He smiled at the eagerness. "Ndocheni," he said. "Tomorrow it is Ndocheni." He opened Gertrude's door, but Gertrude was gone. The little boy was there. The red dress he had bought her was there, but Gertrude was gone. Part 3. Chapter 1. Return to Ndocheni. The engine steams and whistles over the grasslands. The white, flat hills of the mines drop behind, and the country rolls away as far as the eye can see. They sit all together, Khumalo, and the little boy on his knee, and the girl. The little boy has asked for his mother, but Khumalo tells him that she has gone away, and he does not ask any more. Darkness falls, and they thunder through the night. As the sun rises, they wind down the greatest hills of all, to Pietermaritzburg, the lovely city. Here they enter another train, and the train runs along the valley where the tribes live, and the soil is sick. And the people tell Khumalo that the rains will not fall, they cannot plough or plant, and there will be hunger in this valley. They enter the last train that runs beside the lovely road that goes into the hills. Many people know him, and he is afraid of their questions. They talk like children, these people, and it is nothing to ask, "Who is this person? Who is this girl? Who is this child? Where do they come from? Where do they go?" They will ask, "How is your sister? How is your son?" So he takes his holy book and reads it to prevent their questions. The sun is setting over the great valley of the Umzimkhulu behind the mountains. His wife is there, and a friend to help the Umfundisi with his bags. He goes to his wife quickly. She looks her question, and he says to her, "Our son is to die. Perhaps there may be forgiveness, but let us not talk of it now." "I understand you," she says. "And Gertrude? All was ready for her to come, but when I went to wake her, she was gone. And this is the small boy, and this is our new daughter." Khumalo's wife lifts the small boy and kisses him. "You are my child," she says. She puts him down and takes the girl in her arms and says to her, "You are my daughter." Khumalo shakes hands with his friend, and they all set out on the narrow path that leads into the valley of Ndocheni. Here a man calls, "Umfundisi, you are back. It is a good thing." And here a woman says to another, "Look, it is the Umfundisi that has returned." A child comes into the path. "We are glad that the Umfundisi is here again," she says. The path is dropping into the red land of Ndocheni. It is a wasted land, a land of old men and women and children, but it is home. The corn hardly grows to the height of a man, but it is home. It is dry here, Mfundisi. We cry for rain. I have heard it, my friend. Our corn is nearly finished, Mfundisi. It is known to God alone what we shall eat. And the stream has been dry for a month, Mfundisi. Where do we get water then? The women must go to the river, Mfundisi. That comes from the place of Jarvis. At the name of Jarvis, Khumalo feels fear and pain, but he makes himself say, "How is Mr. Jarvis?" He returned yesterday, Mfundisi. I do not know how he is, but his wife returned some weeks ago, and she is sick and thin. They do not speak again, and the path runs past the huts. In the half-darkness, one voice calls to another in some far-distant place. If you are a Zulu, you can hear what they say, but if you are not, even if you know the language, you would find it hard to know what is being called. Some white men call it magic, but it is no magic. It is Africa, the beloved country. They call that you are returned, Mfundisi. I hear it, my friend. They are satisfied. The call comes from the huts and the hills. Mfundisi, you have returned. There is a lamp outside the church, and as Khumalo and his wife approach, the men and women there lift their voices into a song of thanks to God for his kindness. And Khumalo must pray. He prays loudly with the people. God, we give thanks. God, give us rain. And at last, and God, my son, forgive him his evil. It is done. It is out. The hard thing that was so feared. The Lord keep you and give you peace now and forever. And the love of God be with you now and forever. They rise and they sing a new song. God save Africa. Yes, God save Africa, the beloved country. God save us from fear. God save us all. The people have all gone now, and Khumalo turns to his friend. There are things that I must tell you. My sister Gertrude was to come with us, but when I went to wake her, she was gone, and my son, he is to be hanged. You may tell your friends. It is not a thing that can be hidden. I do not know if I should stay here. Why, Mfundisi? What? With a sister who has left her child, and a son who has killed a man? Who am I to stay here? Mfundisi, it must be what you desire. But I tell you that there is not one man or woman that would desire it. There is not one man or woman here that has not been sorry for you, that is not satisfied that you are returned. Why? Could you not see? I have seen, and it has touched me. It is something, after all, that has been suffered. I have lived so long here, I could not desire to leave it. And I have learned a secret. Pain and suffering, they are a secret. Kindness and love, they are a secret. But I have learned that kindness and love can pay for pain and suffering. There is my wife, and you, my friend, and these people who welcomed me, and the child who is so eager to be with us in Ndacheni. So in my suffering I can believe. Khumalo walked to his little house. When the girl had gone to bed, Khumalo gave Msimango's post office book to his wife. She opened it and cried out when she saw that there was £30 in it. "Is it ours?" she asked. "It is ours," he said. "It is a gift from the best man of all my days. Sit down, and I shall tell you about Msimango and about other matters." She sat down, trembling. "I am listening," she said. Chapter 2. Milk for the Children. Khumalo began to pray regularly in his church for the restoration of Ndocheni, but he knew that was not enough. Men must come together and do something. He went to see the chief and asked him to help. But the chief was old and had no useful word to say. So Khumalo went out again into the heat to seek the headmaster of the school. But the headmaster shook his head and talked about economic causes and said that the school was a place of little power. Sad and tired, Khumalo walked back again to his house. Suddenly he caught his breath in surprise, for there was a small white boy on a red horse. A small white boy as like to another who had ridden here as any could be. The boy smiled at Khumalo and said, "Good morning." "Good morning," said Khumalo. "It is a hot day for riding." The boy got off his horse, and they talked as an old man and a young child do talk, with many questions. And the boy proudly used some Zulu words. "That is right," said Khumalo. "Would you like a drink of water? You are hot." "I would like a drink of milk," said the boy. "There is no milk in Ndocheni." The small boy said quietly, "I would like water, Umfundisi." Khumalo brought him the water and asked him, "How long are you staying here?" "Not very long now, Umfundisi. These are not our real holidays now. We are here for special reasons." And Khumalo said in his heart, "O fatherless child, I know your reasons." "Why is there no milk in Ndocheni?" asked the boy. "What do the children do?" Khumalo looked at him. "They die, my child." "Doesn't the doctor come?" "Yes, and he says the children must have milk." And the small boy said in a small voice, "I see." He walked to his horse. "Goodbye, Umfundisi." The night brought coolness. While they were having their meal, the friend who had carried the bags came. "I have a message for you from Mrs. Jarvis." Khumalo had a dull sense of fear. "And come and look what I have brought you." There, outside the door, was milk in shining cans. "The milk is for small children, and it is to be given by you only. And each morning I shall take back the cans, and in the evening I shall bring them back full. This will be done till the grass comes and we have milk again. Where shall I put the cans, Umfundisi?" But Khumalo was silent and stupid. And the man said, "God will bless him." And Khumalo nodded. Chapter 3. No Forgiveness. Letters came from Johannesburg. There was to be no forgiveness for Absalom. He was to be hanged on the 15th day of that month. Khumalo and his wife read this news and could say nothing to each other. At last, Khumalo lifted his eyes and looked out of the windows. "Look," he said. "Look at the clouds." She came and stood by him and saw the great heavy clouds that were gathering on the other side of the Umzinkulu Valley. "It will rain," he said. He went out to look at the clouds, then stood there reading Msimangu's letter. He remained motionless as he read the last lines again. "Father Vincent tells me that Mr. Jarvis has given £1,000 to the African Boys' Club, of which his son was president." While he stood there, he saw a motor car coming down the road into the valley. Then he saw that not far from the church there was a white man sitting still upon a horse, waiting for the car. It was Jarvis. For an hour, Jarvis and the men from the car measured distances on the ground and planted sticks in the ground, as if they were surveying it for some building or other. They had only just finished when the storm broke. The men hurried off in the car, but Jarvis saw Khumalo, who had gone to the church, and called,
Umfundisi, may I stay in your church?
So they went into the church. But it was not long before the rain found holes in the old roof, and Jarvis had to move to avoid it. It was not until the storm was nearly over that Jarvis, without looking at the old man, said, "Is there forgiveness?" Khumalo took the letter from his pocket with trembling hands, and Jarvis read it. "I understand," he said. "When it comes to the 15th day, I shall remember. Stay well, Umfundisi." He climbed on his horse and rode away. Chapter 4. The Dam. The sticks stood where the men had put them, and the word was that a dam was to be built here. It would be filled by a great pipe bringing water from the river at High Place. Khumalo's friend told him that Jarvis had gone away to Pretoria, and his business was the business of the dam. One day, a young man came to Khumalo's house. "You are the Umfundisi? I am the new agricultural demonstrator."
Come into the house, said Khumalo, excited. Who sent you to me?
"Why, the white man who brought me, Mr. Jarvis. He is paying me to work here. I'd come to Ndoceni to teach farming, Umfundisi."
So the young man told the people how they must stop ploughing up and down the hills, how they must plant trees. Some must give up their ground for trees, and some for cattle. But these were hard things to do, because the people must learn that it is harmful for each man to try to earn a living from his own little piece of ground. But the young man was hopeful.
"Umfundisi," said the young man, "there is no reason why this valley should not be what it was before. But it will not happen quickly, not in a day."
"If God wishes," said Khumalo humbly, "before I die, for I have lived my life in destruction."
Chapter 5. Mrs. Jarvis Dies. Over the great valley the storm clouds were gathering again in the heavy heat. Khumalo looked at the sky, and then was surprised to see his friend driving along the road with the milk.
"You are early, my friend."
"I am early, Umfundisi," said his friend seriously. "We work no more today. The wife of Mr. Jarvis is dead."
"Oh, oh, it is a sorrow. And Mr. Jarvis?"
"He goes about silent. You know what sort of man he is."
Khumalo went into the house and with great difficulty wrote a letter.
"Sir,
we are sad here at this church to hear that the mother has passed away. We are certain that she knew of the things you have done for us and did something in it. We shall pray in this church for the rest of her soul, and for you also in your suffering. Your faithful servant, Reverend S. Khumalo." And later came an answer. "Umfundisi, I thank you for your message of sympathy and for the promise of the prayers of your church. You are right. My wife knew of the things that are being done and had the greatest part in it. These things we did in memory of our beloved son. It was one of her last wishes that a new church should be built at Ndoceni, and I shall come to discuss it with you. You should know that my wife was suffering before we went to Johannesburg. Yours truly, James Jarvis." Chapter 6. Restoring the Valley. There is ploughing in Ndoceni, and indeed on all the farms around it. But the ploughing goes slowly, because the young demonstrator tells the men they must no longer go up and down. They must throw up walls of earth and plough round the hills, so that the fields look no longer as they used to look in the old days of ploughing. There has been much silence and much discontent. No one was more dissatisfied than those who had to give up their fields. But there is something new in this valley, some spirit and some life, and much to talk about in the huts. Although nothing has come yet, something is here already.
"You can be proud," said Khumalo to the young demonstrator, "for there is a new life in this valley. I have been here for many years, but I have never seen ploughing with such spirit. It is not only these rains, there is hope here, such as I have never seen before."
"You must not expect too much," said the young man anxiously. "I do not expect much this year. The corn will be a little higher, but the soil is poor indeed."
"How long will it be before the trees are ready?"
"Many years. Tell me, Umfundisi, do you think the people will bear the winter for 7 years?"
"Have courage. Both the chief and I are working for you."
"I am impatient for the dam," said the demonstrator. "When the dam is made, there will be water for the fields. There will be milk in this valley. It will not be necessary to take the white man's milk."
Khumalo looked at him. "Where would we be without the white man's milk?" he asked. "Where would we be without all that this white man has done for us? Where would you be also? Would you be working for him here?"
"It is true I am paid by him. I am not ungrateful."
"Then you should not speak so," said Khumalo coldly.
"I understand you," said the young man. "This man is a good man, and I respect him. Umfundisi, I work here with all my heart because I work for my country and my people. I could not work so for any master. It was the white man who gave us so little land. It was the white man who took us away from the land to go to work. And if this valley were restored, as you are always asking in your prayers, do you think it would hold all the people of the tribe if they returned?"
"I do not know, indeed."
"But I know, Umfundisi. We can restore this valley for those who are here, but when the children grow up, there will again be too many. Some will have to go still."
And Khumalo was silent, having no answer.
"We work for Africa," said the young man, "not for this man or that man, not for a white man or a black man, but for Africa."
The young man went into the house, and Khumalo stood for a moment in the dark, where the stars were coming out over the valley that was to be restored. And that for him was enough. He was too old for new and uncomfortable thoughts. He turned and followed the young man into the house. Chapter 7. The Dawn Has Come. This was the 14th day. Khumalo said to his wife, "I am going up into the mountain." And she said, "I understand you." For twice before he had done it, once when the small boy Absalom was very sick, and once when he had thought of giving up his work as a priest to run a native store at Donnybrook for more money than the church could ever pay. "Would you come with me?" he said, "for I do not like to leave you alone." "I cannot come, for the girl is near her time, and who knows when it will be, but you must certainly go." She made him a bottle of tea and a few heavy cakes of corn. He took his coat and stick and walked up the path that went to the mountain. Now it was almost dark, and he was alone. But as he started to climb the path that ran through the great stones, a man on a horse was there, and a voice said to him,
"It's you, Umfundisi." "It is I, Mr. Jarvis." "Well met, Umfundisi. For here in my pocket I have a letter for the people of your church, and the church, Umfundisi. Do you desire a new church?"
Khumalo could only smile. There were no words in him.
The plans will soon come to you, and you must say if they are what you desire. I am anxious to do it quickly, for I shall be leaving this place."
Khumalo stood shocked, and although it was dark, Jarvis understood him, for he said quickly,
"I shall be often here. You know I have work in Ndotcheni, but I am alone in my house, so I am going to Johannesburg to live with my daughter-in-law and her children. You know the small boy." "Indeed, I know him." "Is he like him?"
"He is like him. There is a brightness inside him."
Yes, that is true. The other was the same."
They stayed there in silence till Jarvis said,
"Umfundisi, where are you going at this hour?"
Khumalo answered,
"I am going into the mountain." "I understand you. I understand completely."
Jarvis stretched his hand over the valley, and he said,
"One thing is about to be finished, but here is something that is only begun, and while I live it will continue. Umfundisi, go well."
"Sir."
"Do not go before I have thanked you," said Khumalo, "for the young man and the milk, and now for the church." "I give it willingly," said Jarvis. "Go well, Umfundisi. Throughout this night, stay well."
and Khumalo cried after him,
"Go well! Go well!"
He climbed to the summit and found a place sheltered from the winds. He began to pray. He prayed for Gertrude and the people of Shantytown. He gave thanks to God for the kindness of Msimangu and Father Vincent and Mrs. Litebi and the white man Jarvis, for the welcome of the people when he returned to Ndotcheni, and for the work of restoration now begun. Why was it given to one man to have so much of his pain changed into gladness? He woke suddenly. It was cold. He thought of his son Absalom. Would he be awake? Would he be able to sleep this night before the morning? He cried out,
"My son! My son! My son!"
When he woke again, there was a faint change in the east. And now it was time to be awake, for it might be they had woken his son and called him to make ready. He found another place where he could look to the east, and if it was true what men said, when the sun came up over the edge, it would be done. And the east became lighter and lighter, till he knew that the time was not far off. And when he expected it, he rose to his feet and took off his hat and laid it down on the earth and put his hands together. And while he stood there, the sun rose in the east. Yes, it is the dawn that has come. The Titihoya wakes from sleep and goes about its work of forlorn crying. The sun touches the tops of the mountains. The great valley of the Umzimkulu is still in darkness, but the light will come there. Ndotcheni is still in darkness, but the light will come there also. For it is the dawn that has come, as it has come for 1,000 centuries, never failing. But when that dawn will come, of our release from the fear of slavery and the slavery of fear, why, that is a secret.